Name is Kathleen. I am 34 years old and a single mother. I stood completely paralyzed as my older sister drove her sharp designer heels into every single birthday present my 7-year-old son had received, systematically destroying the toys I had saved for months to buy. Instead of stepping in to stop the senseless destruction, my mother stood right beside her and actually began clapping. She let out a loud, mocking laugh while watching my little boy stare in absolute horror at his ruined gifts. I rushed forward and scooped my sobbing son into my arms, holding him tightly against my chest, as if I could physically shield him from the undeniable cruelty radiating from the very people who were supposed to protect him. Their sickening laughter stopped instantly when my father slowly pushed his chair back and stood up, his face frozen with controlled fury. He reached for his left hand, removed his gold wedding band, and slammed it down onto the glass coffee table. Staring directly into my mother's eyes with unwavering authority, he delivered exactly 6 earth-shattering words, words powerful enough to permanently destroy their toxic empire. Those 6 syllables left both women completely speechless as the reality of their massive mistake finally came crashing down. Before I reveal how this dramatic day ended, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you believe toxic family members should always face the consequences of their actions. A year ago, a ruthless divorce forced me to pack up my son and move into the dark basement of a sprawling house in Atlanta. The brutal legal battle had completely drained my savings while leaving me as the sole financial provider for my young son Julian. We traded our comfortable previous life for a damp subterranean room that barely received any natural sunlight during the day. I spent my first few nights staring at the unfinished ceiling while listening to the heavy footsteps echoing from the upper floors, wondering how my life had unraveled so quickly. I quickly secured 2 different jobs to keep us afloat because the expensive legal fees had left me absolutely penniless with no safety net. I worked long, exhausting shifts at a corporate office during the day before rushing home to tackle a remote data entry position late into the night. While I pushed my body beyond its limits, trying to afford basic necessities, my mother Linda lived an incredibly leisurely life upstairs. She spent her afternoons lounging on expensive leather furniture or hosting lavish luncheons for her affluent friends in the expansive main dining room. My older sister Sylvia also resided in the main house without ever holding a steady job or contributing a single dollar to the household maintenance. They treated the upper levels of the property like an exclusive luxury resort while completely ignoring the intense struggles unfolding right beneath their feet. The entire burden of paying the utility bills alongside the massive weekly grocery expenses for the whole family fell squarely onto my exhausted shoulders. Every time the electricity or water bills arrived in the mail, Sylvia would simply toss the envelopes down the basement stairs for me to handle. She constantly paraded around the house showing off pristine designer handbags that cost significantly more than my entire monthly salary combined. Sylvia would strut into the kitchen holding her newest leather purse and casually demand that I restock the refrigerator with premium organic groceries. "You really need to buy the imported mineral water tomorrow because the cheap tap water is completely ruining my complexion," Sylvia instructed me with an arrogant smirk before walking away to plan her next expensive shopping trip. I silently gripped the edges of the kitchen counter while calculating how many extra night shifts I needed to work just to cover their extravagant grocery requests. This bizarre living arrangement was entirely funded by my father William, who was working on lucrative engineering contracts overseas in the Middle East. He sent substantial amounts of money home every single month under the strict assumption that it would support the entire family equally. Whenever William called home through international phone lines, Linda and Sylvia would literally fight each other to grab the receiver first. They intentionally moved into locked rooms or walked out into the expansive backyard to avoid letting me speak directly to him about our situation. I would often stand quietly near the wooden staircase listening to Mom weave elaborate lies about our living conditions to keep the money flowing into her personal accounts. Kathleen and Julian are doing absolutely wonderful downstairs, so you do not need to worry about them at all. Linda lied smoothly into the phone while admiring her freshly manicured nails. They successfully convinced Dad that I was living comfortably without paying rent while completely hiding the fact that they were treating me like an indentured servant. I desperately wanted to snatch the telephone away from them to expose their rampant financial abuse and reveal the miserable reality of our daily existence. However, the looming threat of being thrown out onto the street with a young child forced me to swallow my pride and endure their relentless cruelty. I wiped away my frustrated tears every single night before returning to my glowing computer screen to finish the endless tasks for my secondary job. Gritting my teeth through the physical and emotional exhaustion became my only coping mechanism because keeping a stable roof over Julian remained my singular priority. I accepted the deeply unfair treatment as a temporary sacrifice, while quietly hoping that William would eventually return home to see the undeniable truth for himself. 4 days before the birthday celebration, the unexpected rumble of a heavy vehicle engine pulling into the driveway signaled that Dad had returned from overseas much earlier than originally anticipated. The completely unannounced arrival of William threw Mom and Sylvia into a state of absolute frantic panic as they scrambled around the pristine main floor like terrified intruders. They hurriedly shoved massive stacks of luxury jewelry receipts alongside several expensive boutique shopping bags deep into the bottom drawers of the mahogany cabinets right before he could turn the front doorknob. Sylvia hastily kicked her newly purchased designer shoes underneath the velvet sofa, while Linda frantically smoothed out her pristine silk blouse to project the illusion of a modest suburban housewife. Dad stepped heavily into the grand foyer, dropping his thick leather luggage onto the polished hardwood floor, while his sharp eyes immediately scanned the room to evaluate the true state of his household. He quickly noticed the dark circles under my eyes, signaling severe physical exhaustion, while observing that Julian was wearing faded shirts that were clearly several sizes too small for his growing frame. This grim visual reality starkly contradicted the glamorous, wealthy stories Mom had been fabricating over the international phone calls during the past 12 months. Before Dad could even formulate a single question regarding our miserable appearance, Linda hastily rushed forward to tightly hook her manicured hands around his suit arm. She flashed a fake, welcoming smile while instantly deploying her highly calculated manipulation tactics to control the unfolding narrative before I could speak. You really should not worry about her because she has been spending her money recklessly and irresponsibly lately, which is why she is struggling so much downstairs. Linda smoothly lied while shooting a deeply threatening glare in my direction. I desperately sought an opportunity to pull Dad aside into the quiet kitchen to finally reveal the crushing financial abuse we had been silently enduring under his own roof. Every single time I took a deliberate step toward him, trying to initiate a private conversation, Sylvia would intentionally interpose her body directly between us. She used her loud, piercing voice to shatter the tense atmosphere while completely redirecting his attention toward trivial household upgrades she had purchased using his stolen funds. Dad, you absolutely need to come into the living room right now to look at the beautiful custom silk curtains I just ordered for the tall windows. Sylvia yelled enthusiastically while physically dragging him away from my vicinity by his coat sleeve. She monopolized his time by forcing him to admire expensive imported rugs and lavish decorative pieces, while completely ignoring the tired grandson standing quietly in the hallway. The relentless interference from both women left me feeling entirely suffocated until my cellular phone vibrated in my pocket with an incoming call from my best friend, Rachel. I retreated back down the dark wooden basement stairs to answer the call in privacy, where I poured out my intense frustrations regarding the toxic environment actively unfolding above me. My words tumbled out as I explained how they were strategically blocking my access to my own father just to protect their massive web of financial deceit. You must remain incredibly strong right now because the real truth certainly cannot be hidden by those greedy people forever. Rachel firmly encouraged me over the speaker while urging me to maintain my emotional composure. Her supportive words reminded me that impulsive reactions would play directly into the false narrative Linda had already established minutes earlier in the foyer. The grounding conversation with Rachel helped me realize that engaging in a frantic screaming match with Mom and Sylvia would only make me look hysterical in front of my exhausted father. I made the deliberate decision to silently step back from the chaotic drama upstairs and focus my entire mental energy on preparing a wonderful celebration for Julian. Wrapping his hidden presents became my primary focus while quietly planning the small backyard decoration setup to ensure my little boy would experience genuine happiness on his special day. I firmly believed that William possessed enough intelligence and sharp observational skills to eventually uncover the massive financial deception completely on his own without my direct intervention. Choosing to endure a few more days of their arrogant superiority felt acceptable, knowing confidently that the fragile foundation of their stolen luxury was already beginning to crack under his watchful presence. On the morning of the birthday celebration, Sylvia completely ignored the special milestone of Julian while brazenly commandeering the entire expansive living room space for her loud, affluent guests. She casually arranged expensive imported wine bottles alongside gourmet catered snacks across the polished kitchen island to entertain superficial socialite friends. Her arrogant laughter echoed loudly throughout the main floor as she demanded perfection from the hired catering staff while treating the family home like her exclusive country club venue. Make sure the imported caviar is properly chilled before the rest of my important guests arrive, because I refuse to serve mediocre appetizers today. Sylvia loudly instructed a nervous waiter while adjusting her shimmering diamond necklace. I silently retreated away from the chaotic indoor environment to personally decorate a small, intimate corner out in the grassy backyard so Julian could enjoy his special afternoon in absolute peace. Hanging a few simple, colorful banners between the massive oak trees felt like a monumental victory after spending countless exhausting nights working multiple jobs just to afford his party supplies. I carefully brought out the high-technology camera drone wrapped in bright blue paper which I had meticulously saved my meager wages for many tedious months to finally purchase for him. You are going to absolutely love the amazing surprise hidden inside this big box today, because you truly deserve the world. I whispered softly to Julian while smoothing down his neat shirt collar near the wooden patio table. Meanwhile, William decided to spend his quiet morning actively organizing the neglected, dusty bookshelves and rearranging the heavy, forgotten storage boxes inside his private home office. He wanted to reclaim his personal workspace after working overseas for so long, but quickly realized the room had been utilized as a chaotic dumping ground. The wooden floorboards creaked loudly under his weight as he systematically cleared away the towering piles of useless decorative junk that Linda had recklessly accumulated during his prolonged physical absence. He meticulously sorted through discarded shipping boxes filled with designer shoes and expensive home decor items that completely contradicted the frugal financial narrative his wife had constantly maintained over their international phone calls. While exerting immense physical effort to push a remarkably heavy wooden filing cabinet away from the dark corner, William accidentally dislodged a strange object deliberately concealed within the narrow wall gap. A thick, bundled stack of unopened mail tightly secured with thick rubber bands dropped onto the dusty hardwood floor right next to his polished leather shoes. He knelt down slowly to inspect the suspicious hidden package, only to realize the thick envelopes prominently displayed the official crimson logos of several major national banking institutions, alongside premium luxury retail brands. The deliberate physical effort required to securely wedge these confidential documents behind a massive piece of furniture instantly triggered his deep suspicions regarding the true financial state of his supposedly wealthy household. Tearing open the sealed banking envelopes revealed massive credit card debt notices, explicitly registered under the names of Linda and Sylvia, totaling tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid luxury purchases. Buried beneath those terrifying financial statements were the monthly household utility invoices, alongside the weekly grocery delivery receipts, clearly showing my personal banking information printed as the sole paying customer. The undeniable documented proof of their systematic financial abuse and relentless exploitation of my exhausting labor was finally laid bare under the bright morning sunlight streaming through the dusty office window. How could they possibly lie to my face about our finances while treating my own hardworking daughter like a disposable servant? William muttered furiously to himself while tightly gripping the damning paperwork. William stood completely paralyzed inside the office space, while clenching the crumpled banking statements in his shaking hands with a level of absolute freezing fury he had never previously experienced. He stared through the slightly cracked wooden door to silently observe the blatantly arrogant attitude of his wife and older daughter, laughing loudly with their wealthy friends in the adjacent living room. The sickening contrast between their fake glamorous lifestyle showcased for their guests and the undeniable financial reality resting in his palms shattered the lingering illusions he held about his family. He remained completely motionless in the shadows while silently calculating his next ruthless move to permanently dismantle their parasitic existence without showing any immediate outward reaction. Exactly at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our hopeless endurance officially reached its absolute final breaking point. Julian eagerly carried his brand-new high-technology camera drone toward the center of the grassy backyard to finally test the exciting features. His remarkably radiant smile alongside the fascinating mechanical sounds of the flying toy instantly captured the undivided attention of several wealthy guests mingling nearby. The sudden shift in social focus away from her lavish indoor gathering caused Sylvia to experience an intense wave of uncontrollable, irrational jealousy. She could not fathom the idea of a 7-year-old boy stealing her carefully manufactured spotlight during a party she had falsely claimed as her own exclusive celebration. Sylvia aggressively marched across the patio with a deeply malicious glare fixed directly upon the innocent child playing peacefully near the oak trees, completely unaware of the incoming danger. She lifted her sharp designer heel to deliberately drive it completely through the expensive plastic chassis of the drone, while subsequently stomping relentlessly onto every other wrapped present nearby. Linda stood merely a few feet away, witnessing the entire senseless destruction without ever attempting to intervene or scold her older daughter for ruining a beautiful birthday moment. Instead of acting like a protective grandmother, Linda actually began clapping her hands together while letting out a loud, heartless laugh that echoed across the quiet suburban yard. "You really need to teach this annoying little brat some proper manners before allowing him to disrupt my important social events," Sylvia yelled with overwhelming arrogance while kicking a broken piece of plastic away. I completely ignored her venomous words while sprinting across the grass to scoop the trembling body of Julian tightly against my chest to provide immediate physical comfort. I wrapped my arms securely around his sobbing frame to physically shield his broken heart from the relentless cruelty radiating from the people standing arrogantly above him. The devastating sound of his desperate crying pierced through the ambient party music, while the affluent guests stared at the chaotic scene in absolute stunned silence, unable to process the situation. William suddenly stepped out onto the wooden patio deck, possessing a facial expression as freezing and unforgiving as solid glacial ice. He slowly walked through the silent crowd of wealthy onlookers before stopping directly in front of the outdoor seating area where his stunned wife stood. He deliberately reached for his left hand to smoothly pull off the heavy gold wedding band he had worn faithfully for several decades, without any hesitation. He slammed the metallic ring violently onto the surface of the glass patio table before projecting his booming voice across the entire sprawling backyard. "This marriage is over right now. William declared with absolute unwavering authority to permanently shatter the toxic illusion they had desperately maintained for so many years. Both women remained completely paralyzed in their designer dresses as the devastating weight of those 6 syllables completely froze their cognitive functions. The mocking smiles vanished from their faces instantly, while an atmosphere of pure dread rapidly replaced their previous arrogant superiority within a matter of fleeting seconds. Linda finally broke the suffocating silence by frantically waving her manicured hands in the air, attempting to salvage her crumbling public reputation. "What are you talking about? Because you simply cannot let this noisy, disruptive child ruin our beautiful gathering today," Linda stammered in a blind panic, while desperately trying to grab his arm to regain control. William forcefully shoved her hands away before aggressively throwing the massive stack of hidden credit card bills directly into their horrified faces with tremendous physical force. The thick banking envelopes fluttered down onto the ruined birthday presents while he coldly exposed their elaborate web of lies to the entire captive audience listening closely on the deck. He systematically detailed their despicable financial abuse alongside the sickening reality of forcing me to pay the utility bills while they squandered his overseas earnings on frivolous luxury items. He looked at their terrified expressions while coldly announcing his immediate intention to permanently cut off every single source of financial support right at that exact moment without any exceptions. The absolute finality in his booming voice confirmed that their luxurious parasitic existence had officially reached a catastrophic terminal conclusion from which they could never possibly recover. Within a single short week, the perfect upper-class facade they had meticulously built was mercilessly stripped away entirely. William took incredibly decisive legal actions by immediately contacting his trusted financial institutions to permanently lock every single joint banking account associated with his name. This swift, aggressive maneuver effectively severed their unauthorized access to his overseas earnings, causing every single credit card held by Linda and Sylvia to be continuously declined at major luxury shopping centers. The deeply humiliating public rejections at high-end retail registers quickly shattered their carefully fabricated illusions of possessing unlimited wealth while leaving them completely stranded. They could no longer purchase their superficial status symbols because the endless pipeline of stolen cash had been forcefully shut down forever by the very man they had betrayed. Operating entirely without their previously abundant cash flow meant Sylvia could no longer continuously fund the lavish, expensive outings expected by her superficial social circle. Those exact same affluent friends who happily drank expensive imported wine at the ruined birthday gathering quickly turned their backs the very moment her financial resources completely evaporated. The elite community she had desperately tried to impress instantly recognized her newly impoverished status, while completely abandoning her without offering a single shred of genuine sympathy. Several former companions even resorted to ruthlessly mocking her sudden catastrophic downfall across various social media platforms by actively posting humiliating pictures detailing her publicly declined transaction receipts. She was completely blacklisted from the luxurious events she previously dominated because her entire identity was strictly tied to a fraudulent bank account she no longer controlled. The humiliating public consequences of their rampant, unchecked greed escalated significantly when a heavy commercial tow truck unexpectedly arrived directly on our pristine front lawn during the early morning hours. The incredibly loud diesel engine signaled the immediate repossession of the luxurious sports car Sylvia had recently leased using fraudulent financial documentation previously authorized by Linda. She had intentionally skipped making her required monthly vehicle payments for several consecutive months just to funnel that stolen cash into rapidly expanding her ridiculous designer wardrobe collection. Watching the shiny, expensive vehicle being forcefully dragged away in heavy steel chains provided a stark, undeniable visual representation of their rapidly crumbling parasitic existence right in front of the probing eyes of curious neighbors. Plunged into a state of absolute overwhelming panic regarding her newly impoverished reality, Sylvia violently turned her vicious, selfish rage directly toward the woman who originally enabled her terrible behavior. She aggressively marched across the ruined living room floor while screaming wildly right into the face of her equally terrified mother, without maintaining any respectful familial boundaries. This entire disaster is completely your fault because we would not have lost absolutely everything if you had just hidden those financial papers much better. Sylvia shrieked hysterically while aggressively stomping her bare feet onto the polished hardwood floor like a petulant toddler. Linda absolutely refused to simply absorb the vicious verbal assault from her ungrateful offspring, while her own comfortable retirement was actively disintegrating right before her terrified, tearful eyes. She fiercely gritted her teeth together while stepping aggressively forward to angrily reprimand the very greedy monster she had spent several decades carefully creating and nurturing with stolen money. You really need to keep your mouth shut right now because your relentlessly extravagant spending habits are exactly what pushed this entire house straight into the deep abyss. Linda viciously cursed back, with pure venom dripping from her hateful, desperate words. The expansive living room instantly transformed into a vicious, chaotic battlefield where the two desperate women relentlessly tore each other apart in a truly pathetic bid for selfish self-preservation. I silently observed their pathetic, chaotic meltdown from the quiet hallway, without feeling even a single ounce of genuine sympathy for their deeply deserved emotional suffering unfolding merely feet away. Leaving behind that incredibly toxic screaming mess, William and I calmly walked through the bedrooms to methodically pack our essential luggage into several large, sturdy suitcases. We gently guided a confused but peaceful Julian out of that suffocating hostile environment to permanently relocate into a highly secure and beautifully quiet luxury hotel suite located downtown. Closing the heavy wooden front door firmly behind us finally severed our physical connection to their poisonous atmosphere while allowing us to genuinely breathe freely for the very first time in many painful years. 2 months later, during a freezing, drizzly evening, the desperate knocking sounds violently shattered the profound peacefulness we had finally achieved. William had quietly utilized his massive personal offshore savings accounts to purchase a beautiful new residence outright, without requiring any complicated mortgage approvals or banking delays. This remarkably gorgeous property featured a highly strict security system specifically designed to provide Julian and me a perfectly safe environment to begin our brand new life away from the terrible chaos. He meticulously planned every single architectural detail to ensure our daily routines remained completely shielded from any potential unwanted visitors or past toxic influences trying to infiltrate our peaceful sanctuary. Despite the incredibly secure gated neighborhood, Linda and Sylvia had somehow managed to discover our highly confidential new residential address by relentlessly stalking our digital footprints and harassing our former neighbors. They unexpectedly appeared directly on our pristine front porch, standing completely soaked by the freezing rain while shivering uncontrollably in their completely ruined designer clothing. Their previously arrogant upper-class postures were entirely replaced by a truly pathetic visual display as they desperately knocked on the thick wooden frame, begging loudly to be allowed inside the warm, brightly lit hallway. I walked slowly toward the entrance while observing their miserable figures through the high-technology security camera mounted directly above the reinforced door frame. The sprawling, luxurious estate back in Atlanta had officially been seized and foreclosed upon by the ruthless banking institutions due to their massive, unpaid financial obligations. Sylvia sobbed hysterically onto the wet concrete steps, while loudly blaming her catastrophic downfall on cruel circumstances, instead of taking any personal accountability for her own relentless, insatiable greed. She wildly smeared her expensive makeup across her pale face while crying about losing her elite social status and being forcefully evicted by the aggressive county sheriff deputies. Meanwhile, Linda desperately attempted to weaponize the sacred concept of familial blood ties to shamelessly beg for a small cash handout to secure temporary emergency lodging for the stormy night. Please have some genuine mercy on us because we truly have absolutely nowhere else to go in this freezing rain tonight. Linda pleaded with an incredibly pitiful vocal tone, specifically calculated to manipulate my psychological vulnerabilities once again. She reached her trembling, wet hands toward the doorway while producing fake tears that completely failed to mask the deep underlying selfishness driving her sudden, desperate visit to our quiet neighborhood. She genuinely expected me to easily forget the years of intense emotional abuse and financial exploitation simply because she was currently experiencing a minor fraction of the intense suffering she previously inflicted upon me. Her manipulative words hung heavily in the freezing air, while the pouring rain continued to ruthlessly wash away the last remaining traces of her carefully manufactured wealthy persona. I stood firmly rooted upon the elevated stone porch while looking down at their pathetic, shivering figures with an absolutely emotionless facial expression that offered them zero comforting warmth. The exact day you clapped your hands and laughed mockingly while my little boy cried hysterically was the exact moment you personally severed those sacred blood ties forever. I replied coldly without showing even a single ounce of genuine hesitation. The shocking finality radiating from my steady voice completely stunned them because they were entirely accustomed to the weak, fearful daughter who used to obey their every single cruel command. They stared up at me with widened, terrified eyes, finally realizing that the endless well of my financial support and familial forgiveness had permanently run dry without any possibility of a future emotional reconciliation. Their loud, dramatic cries immediately intensified as they realized their deeply ingrained manipulative tactics held absolutely zero power over my newly discovered personal boundaries. I completely ignored every single pathetic wail echoing through the stormy atmosphere while they desperately attempted to cling onto the edge of the slippery front steps. I decisively grabbed the polished brass handle to forcefully slam the heavy wooden door completely shut right in front of their horrified faces without looking back even once. Engaging the thick metal residential deadbolt permanently locked those terrible manipulative ghosts of our miserable shared past outside in the freezing rain where they truly belonged for the rest of their pathetic lives. The morning following that heavy rainstorm revealed a perfectly clear sky serving as an undeniable confirmation of our absolute freedom from their enduring toxicity. The incredibly priceless and profoundly peaceful morning atmosphere enveloped the entire property, while William sat comfortably on the newly constructed front porch, thoroughly enjoying his freshly brewed black coffee. Julian was laughing radiantly across the expansive, vibrant green lawn while skillfully piloting a significantly more advanced and incredibly expensive camera drone that his loving grandfather had generously purchased for him. Permanently escaping the crushing, unreasonable financial burdens previously imposed by those deeply toxic parasites finally allowed me to focus completely and secure a massive professional promotion at my demanding corporate workplace. Completely directing my hard-earned income toward my own peaceful household instead of funding their luxury purchases finally enabled me to successfully construct a remarkably solid and incredibly hopeful future for Julian. The incredibly harsh reality of their own devastating choices eventually crashed down upon Linda and Sylvia when the relentless legal debt collectors finally cornered them without any remaining financial escape routes. They were forcefully compelled to accept grueling graveyard shifts at a remarkably dingy local laundromat just to desperately chip away at the massive fraudulent credit card debts they had selfishly accumulated over the years. They are currently forced to endure endless, miserable days filled with profound, agonizing torment alongside deeply delayed regret regarding their previously horrific behavior toward our peaceful family unit. They must continuously suffer intense public contempt, radiating directly from the exact same affluent social circles they had previously attempted to fraudulently infiltrate using stolen overseas money. Witnessing their pathetic, impoverished existence from a safe, secure distance thoroughly validated my incredibly difficult decision to permanently lock them outside in the freezing rain without any hesitation that dramatic evening. Looking back at that entire exhausting nightmare, I have finally realized several incredibly profound and undeniably clear truths regarding complex human relationships and personal boundaries. First, sharing the exact same biological bloodline should never serve as a valid excuse for you to silently accept continuous financial exploitation or relentless emotional abuse from anyone. The bottomless well of selfish greed combined with highly manufactured superficial arrogance will ultimately incinerate the exact same terrible people who actively attempt to spread it. Most importantly, true family consists exclusively of the dedicated individuals who actively protect you during your weakest moments, rather than the greedy opportunists who exploit your vulnerability for their own personal gain. Any toxic person who continuously drains your physical health and deeply damages your emotional spirit simply does not deserve to hold any space whatsoever within your bright, promising future. Thank you so very much for accompanying me and attentively listening to my personal journey until the very final minute. Have you ever been forced to make the incredibly painful decision to completely cut off toxic blood relatives to successfully protect your own mental well-being? Please share your personal thoughts and unique experiences down in the comments section below, because I truly appreciate your valuable perspective and deeply desire to read them.